Today I'm having a conversation with Caito Stewart, and she's here to talk to us about her experience with growing up in Christian Scientist. Thanks for joining me today, Caito.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, awesome. Could you tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up in a Christian Scientist family?
Yeah. Um, well, I grew up in a Christian Scientist family, and I should say that my parents were born in the religion too, actually, by the way. My grandparents, I think, converted at some point on both sides of my family.
Oh, wow. So it's a very strong part of your family.
Yes.
Wow.
Everyone in my family, grandparents, uncles, aunts.
Okay.
So then, so I grew up being taught that, my body, the table that I'm sitting at, this computer, your body, this world and everything in it is an illusion and is not real, something that we have to wake up from, that our real existence is spiritual, an idea of God, a perfect idea that is incapable of being sick or dying or having any problems whatsoever. Can't be sad, can't be, no negative emotions, that kind of thing. And so that also meant, well, if you do have a problem, a negative feeling or an illness or a wound, it has to be solved through correcting your thought, through prayer, not through material means. So that means, not using medicine, not going to doctors, not drinking alcohol, not smoking or using drugs, also not using sex for pleasure, even just anything physical you weren't meant to, partake in, because it would hinder your ability to maintain your pure, correct thought.
Okay. What about pleasurable things that lie outside of drugs and alcohol and sex, like eating a great meal or sugar, things like that?
Right. That's a good question. Weirdly, because everything that we learned about Christian Science came from this one book, Science and Health, written by the founder, Mary Baker Eddy. If she doesn't say something on it, then we just don't know what the stance is. And that's one of those things, food. Okay. And so, obviously I would think it would extrapolate to that, don't take pleasure from food as well. I think, well, actually, you know what? There is a quote, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, what ye shall put on your body, your, some kind of quote that maybe was from the Bible, might have been changed, I don't know. But, my mom would say that to me all the time. Like if I was worrying about being overweight or something, she would, say like, oh, don't worry about that. Just eat what you want. Okay. No dieting. You don't need to exercise. But my father disagreed. He had a very different opinion. So, that was interesting. I don't know why, but so yeah, I think that both my mother and I took comfort in food because that was the only thing we could take comfort in.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
What would it like to grow up in this religion? Like what did that mean for you as a child or as you got older into teenage years?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was confusing because we were the only Christian Science family for miles. And so everything around me, the people, the teachers, my friends, the TV even, was telling me that everything around me was real and my body was real and that it was okay to drink and do all these things. And then being told very strongly the opposite within my family, it was pretty confusing because you're like, how can this not be real? It feels so real, right? And then it also gives you this sort of pressure to be perfect. So when we were sick, we weren't supposed to name the illness. We weren't supposed to give it power or belief by believing in it. So we couldn't even like educate ourselves on what the symptoms were or what it meant or what the name of the disease might be. Like we weren't supposed to know, we weren't supposed to acknowledge it, we were supposed to like act as if it wasn't there. So that would mean that if you were sick, the people around you weren't supposed to acknowledge it. So that can be a little invalidating if you're suffering.
So if they see symptoms, they shouldn't point out, hey, you seem to not be well today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I say I'm not feeling well, they'll be like, shh, don't say that.
Because then you make it real?
You make it real by believing it, or like,
wow.
Right? Like the more you think about it, the more it's going to be manifested.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I never fully understood.
That's so interesting. So how does that manifest in a community? What comes from that?
So, you know, because we're told there is this one way to solve these problems, prayer and correcting your thought. You know, they have Christian Science practitioners who it is their profession to like, you hire them and they help you heal yourself. They help you pray. They help you guide your thought. They draw your attention to certain passages that they think might be helpful for your spiritual journey. But, you know, every time I would try to take advantage of their services when I wasn't well, it just never seemed to work for me. And I always felt like I was being blamed for not praying correctly or not thinking correctly. Like it was always my fault that I was sick. And all I had to do was just think differently, but I couldn't. So I felt this like intense feeling of like embarrassment, guilt, shame, failure, and this need to like be perfect and never be sick or, you know, express negative emotions. I had to just be like this perfect, happy, content, positive person, you know. And so then, yeah, like as I got older, it was sort of like, you know, I don't want to go to church anymore. I don't know if I believe in this, but, you know, I was always pressured by my mom to go to church, and she'd be very upset with me, very disappointed in me if I didn't want to go. The first time I took painkillers, I was in college when I got my wisdom teeth out. Like, I think I was like, I don't know how old I was. I'm going to say 19 or 20, but yeah.
What did that feel like, or what was going on inside of you in considering to take them and then actually doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, why? It's like, once I took them and the pain was like considerably lessened and I was finally able to sleep, I was like, wow, that worked. They said it
really
wouldn't.
Surprising to you. Wow.
You know, yeah, really surprising, because I was like, oh, it's not going to work anyway.
Okay.
And I was just kind of like, why would I struggle so hard and it doesn't even work when there's this like solution right here, you know? And that was sort of in my mind, but I didn't really take painkillers again for, you know, another 5 to 8 years. I'm not sure, but like, it was hard to sort of like, you know, over time. I think it was just like, basically once I had more health issues that required healing, it was like, okay, this isn't working. I just feel like I'm being blamed by this practitioner and I can't do it. And it's like, you know, painful and like just so hard. And then, you know, you take this medicine and you're like, oh, great. Like, you know, so little by little, it was like, okay, I'm just going to hide this from my parents.
Okay.
Or tell them and know that they're going to be upset and disappointed, but they'll get over it. But it will like cause an issue in our relationship probably, you know, so I have to overcome this fear of the guilt and disappointing them because I want relief, you know, from these symptoms.
Wow. So through your college years, that's kind of when you started to consider that,
I mean,
there's a physical world.
I mean, I did. So, okay. The other thing too is just social life, right? I didn't mention this yet, but like, because we were the only Christian Science family or Christian Scientist family, um, I was embarrassed about it. I thought it was weird. People thought it was weird. So I would hide it from most people and, to fit in. And like maybe my closest friends knew, but they didn't really know what it meant. And they were just kind of like, okay, I mean, my parents are Christians. They go to Episcopalian church. So it must be kind of like that,
Oh, okay.
But they sort of knew that I didn't take medicine, but they were just like, okay. We didn't go into it. If somebody did try to like pick my brain about it, I always got really nervous trying to explain it because I couldn't understand it myself, but I would feel this like really strong, pressure to like be able to explain it to people and defend it. And, people would be like, oh, is it Scientology? The cult, Tom Cruise and the pyramid scheme or something like that, and I would be like, no, like it's Christian Science, it's Christian, it's a real religion. But I would be like really embarrassed and just be like, oh God, they think I'm like, oh, a weirdo. And because I grew up in like liberal New York too. So it was like not that cool to be religious, especially as a kid.
Yeah.
So, I partook in drinking and like, tried a cigarette, things like that in high school because everyone else was around me was doing it. And even though I was like, my mother can never know this, I did it. And so it was like, okay, well, yeah, it was kind of like the medicine. It was sort of like, well, some of these things are fun, some are not, but like, I don't know, but I lived with a lot of guilt still, more than other people, I think. So that was hard.
Yeah. So going forward, what has your process been to getting where you're at now?
Yeah. Yeah, so I like as I said, as I was sort of like slowly but surely over the years like becoming more distant from it. I think once I got to college, that was when I stopped going to church because I wasn't in my parents' house anymore, so they couldn't make me go. You know what I did? I joined the Christian Science organization in my undergrad, in my college, partly because I felt that my mother wanted me to. But, and it was like I was one of 4 members. It's really tiny at this really big university. And I remember, they wanted me to like stand by the cafeteria, like handing out leaflets for some lecture that they wanted to have. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And I'm standing there handing out these leaflets, like hoping I don't see anybody I know. And then a friend walks by and is like, what are you doing? That's creepy. And I was like, oh, I am creepy,
Oh,
super
what did that
embarrassed.
feel like? Yeah.
Oh, it felt awful. I mean, I just wanted to crawl into a hole and hide. Like, I really didn't want people to know. So just every time that happened, it was like, just wanting to hide it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was like the social aspects and then like the actual like medicine working better than, the prayer. And so over time, I sort of like had mostly abandoned it, but I still sort of had this like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like limbo situation where I was like, I know that it doesn't fit with my lifestyle right now, but like I had sort of been led to believe by, the practitioners and whoever that the reason it wasn't working was because I was living in sin, because I was, having sex out of wedlock, because I was drinking alcohol, whatever, dabbling in painkillers, when I needed. And that was the reason. It was, affecting my ability to pray and correct, and heal.
Wow.
And so there was a part of me that still believed that, I think. But there was also a part of me that was like, that may be true, but it's too hard and I just can't. I want to fit in. I want a normal life. So I'm going to give that up for now. But maybe when I'm older and I care less about fitting in, or like maybe when I'm more, I don't know, maybe like when I retire or something, you know, I was like, I'll have more energy to devote to this religion and I can do it right, you know, is sort of how I felt, and make my mom proud or something. But yeah, there was like this point where my mom passed away and it was like, okay, you know, death is real. I don't understand how they can say it's not. And then
really, they say it's not real.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like they just say like, oh, well, you know, like the body is gone, but it was never real to begin with. So she's just who she always was, out there living her life. Maybe if she hasn't fully reached like full understanding as a Christian Scientist, and she has like more on her journey to go to like realizing her true self, she might like, you know, wake up in another body on a parallel universe or something like that, possibly, is what some people thought. And sort of like continue her journey of learning and like, you know, reaching a higher understanding. That was sort of like what she believed to think about like afterlife and stuff. There was no like heaven or hell. It was just like that. But yeah, anyway, like once, I don't know. So I guess I sort of believe that as well. I believed, but now I don't know what I believe. I'm still figuring it out. But I came back to the US because I was in Japan when that happened. And I like reconnected with some old friends who were also Christian Scientists. I had met them at a Christian Science like sleepaway summer camp, which was amazing, by the way. I mean, it was really cool. We like rode horses and hiked mountains and rafted rivers. But also talked about Christian Science a whole lot. So I had like this group of girlfriends who were like scattered across the US from that, and we reconnected, and some of us were still in, and some of us were out, and some of us were sort of in that like limbo stage. And I was still in that limbo stage at that point. But one of the women had eventually like sort of, you know, confided that she had like left Christian Science fully, and that it had been really like traumatic and painful for her. And at one point when I sort of like expressed to her that I was like starting to feel a bit like angry at Christian Science because I felt that it had led my mother to neglect her health and essentially like led to her death. I thought, you know, like she didn't take care of herself. She ate lots of junk food, ate whatever she wanted, didn't exercise. You know, when she had heart attacks and like heart trouble, didn't get medical help, refused it. And then by the time that she like considered doing that, it was too late. But the other thing was that, I think it's okay to say this, she didn't want us to know about her physical condition or her illnesses, because she was afraid that if she named it and if we knew about it, our worry, our belief in it, and our concern would undermine her ability to heal herself. So she hid it from us. So I had no idea that she was unwell. So when she died, it was like, what? It was like, what do you mean she's dead? She was fine last week.
You didn't know.
I had no idea. I knew that she had had one heart attack like 5 years before or something like that. But the last I had seen, she had lost weight and looked like a lot better and was like, I'm great now. I'm so healthy and happy, and like, you know, dropped like many sizes, and, you know, now I can like walk up this hill and I feel great. And, you know, so I thought, okay, no problem. She'll be around for forever, because her mom died at like, I think like 95, just this
Mhm.
past January.
Wow.
You know, so I thought, okay, we've got time. One
Mhm.
day I'll move back to the US and we'll spend time together. But,
Mhm.
you know, I had no idea. So when she passed, it was like a complete shock,
Yeah.
very traumatic. And I just, you know, became kind of angry at Christian Science for causing her to ignore her health and hide things from us. You
Mhm.
know, I wanted to be there with her. I wanted to, if I had known, I would have gone home and spent time with her. And I don't know. I mean, I probably wouldn't have been able to help her. I wouldn't have been able to convince her to like get help because my dad was already trying to do that. Um, but yeah, so I think that was like the beginning of it where I was like, okay. And I confided in my friend about this, that I was feeling this anger
Mhm.
about it. And then she was like, you know, I joined this Facebook group
Mhm.
for ex-Christian scientists. It's like a
Mhm.
support group
Wow.
of other people who have gone through this. And I think you might want to check it out.
Mhm.
And I was like, huh, okay, cool.
Hmm.
So I checked it out and I was like, whoa. I just like kind of assumed I was like the only one going through this. And
Mhm.
suddenly there's like hundreds of people
Mhm.
going through this. I
Wow.
don't know the exact number, it may be less than that, but there was a community and there was
Mhm.
people saying things like, it's a cult, it's
Mhm.
not real Christianity.
Mhm.
Some people had become atheists or agnostics. Some had gone on to like other sects of Christianity, but like everybody had had these shared experiences. And I just started to like read all these posts, and I was afraid to engage at first because I was like kind of shocked by the things that people were saying. Like when I saw the word cult, I was like visibly,
Mhm.
physically reacting to it. Like, no, not a cult. You know, that's Scientology, not us.
Mhm.
Um, but then people recommended books written by ex-Christian scientists to me, and I started reading them, and I was reading all these posts and seeing like how many of my experiences were reflected in these other people's experiences, and realizing things that I thought were just unique to my family were actually maybe connected to this religion. And
Mhm.
I was like, whoa, you know, and it just made me hungry to know more. And
Mhm.
so I started this like sort of re-education process that I think I'm still in the middle of.
Okay.
But yeah, I've just been learning a lot of things that the church tended to hide, or like
Mhm.
the so the there's a mother church in Boston, which is like the headquarters, and they manage like all the publishing of like the written materials,
Mhm.
and they all, and like any press written about the religion. So if there's negative press, they try to suppress it. If somebody tries to write a book exposing it, they
Oh, interesting.
try to suppress it. I
So
mean,
there's
I think,
there's a lot of control of information.
yeah. And so growing up in Christian Science, there was like just sort of certain narratives that I always heard and was told to believe. And then when I started reading these books written by people who had left the religion, it was like, you know,
Mhm.
my eyes were just opened. It was like, oh, that's who she was, the founder. That's what she actually said and did. And, you know,
Mhm.
I just sort of realized like, this is a hoax. None of this is real.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Can I even believe in God anymore?
Wow.
Like,
So this
do I
brought
even
up
believe?
a lot of existential.
Oh yeah, and I'm still figuring it out. Like I think just a month ago I was crying because I was just like, I don't even know if my mom still exists or if that was just it. You
Mhm.
know, like when I die, what's going to happen to me? Like I'm freaking out about that right now, honestly. But it's scary to like have that like comforting belief suddenly like pulled out from under you and not know what to trust or believe anymore.
Mhm.
It's terrifying
Totally.
and isolating, and yeah. So I think there's like a grieving process for
Mhm.
it too, like grieving this security, this community, this way of thinking, like, and also like an anger at the religion and at a little bit my parents and my grandparents, because it's like, how could we all have been so stupid? How could we have been duped? I feel embarrassed. Like, you know, I
Wow.
don't know. all
So
these feelings. Yeah.
yeah, how have you moved through that grief, or what's helped? And
Um,
I
yeah.
know it's a process. It's not just one day you feel grief and the next day it's resolved.
Right.
It's a cycle. It's a process. But
Yeah.
what have you done to kind of help you with that?
Yeah. So I've always like used like journaling and writing and music and art to work through like feelings of grief or like, you know, challenges like that, emotions. So naturally I was doing that in regards to the grief over my mother.
Mm.
But that sort of like once I got through like the initial like dealing with the grief over her and those losses, um suddenly the artwork started moving in the direction of like dealing with Christian Science
Mm.
and like my feelings about that and about just, you know, my whole experience. So um you know, like these pill cases, I just realized I have one in front of me. Perfect. um I started, I'm still working on it, but I started making um large larger than life size like sculptures of these pill cases
Mm-hmm.
and like sort of putting objects inside them and sort of like going back and like looking back on my experience and sort of thinking about how like, okay, you know, we weren't supposed to do all these things, and yet my mother and I connected through food, and she loved food, and she like taught me how to like make the most delicious egg sandwich by like slathering on extra mayonnaise and like
Mm-hmm.
eating tons of ice cream. And you know, she, when I got sick, she'd make me chicken soup and give me orange juice for the extra vitamin C. And it was like, wait, if you're going to do that, then why not just give me medicine? You know, like I started to sort of like go back through and like think about all these things and be like, how hypocritical, you know? And I was angry, but then I was also like, well, it's really hard to try and be this like perfect Christian Scientist while living in this world, you know? And so I sort of realized like they struggled with it too, my parents. My dad was like really into lifting weights and stuff. And, you know, I was thinking about like how that maybe wasn't so in line with Christian Science either, but he needed something, you know, like,
Outlets.
right?
Yeah.
So after like working through this piece, and I'm not even done making it, but like there's like a process of like journaling, reflecting, researching, like drawing connections between things, and then sort of like trying to put myself in other people's shoes when I'm mining my past experiences. And somehow I end up in this place of like finding empathy for them. And it's like, so I can sort of forgive my parents a little bit and like feel like, okay, you know, it was hard for them too to be a Christian Scientist. But they just didn't know there was any other way. It didn't feel like there was because they were raised in it too.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm still working on this, you know, this piece with the so I'm like not putting photos out of it yet, but because it's not done, but I'm working on that. I'm still reading all these books and, you know, using the community on Facebook, but I've been writing a memoir about it and just like writing out my feelings about it, analyzing, writing songs, lyrics for my band, and like singing about it is really therapeutic too. Letting out the emotions and all that. But yeah, there was another piece I made called Stan Porter at the Door of Thought, which is like a quote from Mary Baker Eddy, which basically meant like, you know, be a guard at the door into your mind and don't let in any negative thoughts or any thoughts that would, right? And that's like what my mom was trying to do when she was like, I can't tell them about my illness because then I'll let bad thoughts in that will, you know, manifest this further or like make it harder to heal it. So I was thinking about this idea a lot because I was like, it's like, it's just like something that I'm contending with and that I was angry at, I guess. And I started thinking about how for so many years, whenever I was like troubled or stressed or ill, something I would do when I was trying to pray was I would sing the Christian Science hymns, because there was a whole hymnal of hymns with very specifically Christian Science, like the lyrics were changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would like sing a bunch of those to like comfort myself. And a lot of them were just like ingrained in my head. I like knew all the words. And I realized that they were no longer comforting to me anymore. They were like making me cringe and like triggering for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to deal with that too. So I did this thing where I sang one of the hymns and I recorded myself singing it a cappella. And then I put it onto this device that's like light activated. And I found this like old kitchen cabinet from like a vintage shop. And I installed the device inside the cabinet. And I was going to do this in my thesis show, actually, for my grad program this past year, but then our thesis shows got canceled. But the idea was that the cabinet would be installed on the wall, and then viewers could walk up and open the cabinet if they felt like it. And as soon as they opened the cabinet, the light would filter in and activate the player, and it would start playing the recording of me singing this song about God and the Christ is here, blah blah blah. And basically they had the power to like close it, and that would stop the song immediately, or they could like listen to the whole thing as much as they wanted. And there was something for me that was like really helpful or like empowering for me to make this piece, because it was sort of like yes, you're a part of me, but I can shut you out. I'm standing porter to the door of my thought now, and I've decided you're no longer invited, so it goes both ways, kind of. Right. So that was like really empowering for me to sort of conceptually think that through and make this piece. And I don't normally make like sound pieces or interactive pieces like that. I've only been making sculpture for a year. I used to be a painter, but working through these issues has made me a much more conceptual artist, because I'm like really trying to work through some things, and I can't just do that with like pretty colors and shapes. Maybe some people can, but just for me, it led me in this new direction, which has been actually really exciting for my artwork too. So
wow, that's really neat that you've found art to be so useful to you in your process. Any advice that you can give to other people who are earlier in the journey, or just along the way?
Yeah. Well, one thing is that I think it's important to find other people and to find sources of support so that you know that you're not alone. But I also think it's important to remember that like leaving is only the first step. And if you still feel like the religion or the belief system has a hold on you in any way, maybe you still have one foot in and one foot out. And maybe there's some like re-education that you still might want to do for yourself, because that has been super freeing for me. Yeah.
Wow.
So I recommend, really like looking for resources and books and whatever you can.
Great. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for giving all of your input. I really appreciate it.
Sure.